I had been keeping the receipts for 4 months in a yellow folder in the bottom drawer of my desk. Not out of distrust, or, yes, out of distrust, but also out of something older than distrust. Out of a habit I learned as a little girl in my house in Pasadena, where everything that isn't documented ends up dissolving into the air until no one remembers it existed. What my brother didn't know that Saturday night when he raised his glass with his left hand and started giving thanks with that model son-in-law smile I had never seen on him before was that the entire banquet was invoiced in my name. The event hall in Santa Barbara, also the 4-course menu for 140 people. The waiters, the musicians in the string quartet, the white flowers. My sister-in-law had specifically requested be imported because the domestic ones, according to her, didn't have the right shade. Everything. And the honeymoon trip to Bali that I had gifted them, in a gold envelope that was now resting somewhere on the head table. That trip was also in my name, on my card, in the travel agency app that I still had open on my phone inside my purse. But to get to that part, let me tell you how I ended up in that chair at table 10, which was the table furthest from the bridal party, where they had seated me between two of the bride's second cousins I had never seen in my life. It all started on the Sunday in January, when I went to eat at my mom's house. My mom lives in the same house where my brother and I grew up, on a quiet street behind the old Pasadena district. A house with an interior courtyard and a lemon tree my dad had planted before he died, which now produced lemons all year round without anyone doing a thing for it. That afternoon, my mom had made pot roast. It's what she makes when she wants to soften someone up before asking for a favor. I knew it the second I walked in and smelled the kitchen. The three of us ate: my mom, my brother, and me. My brother had shown up with his girlfriend Chloe, whom I had seen exactly 5 times before at family gatherings. Chloe was wearing a new engagement ring, a solitaire my brother had given her in December, and throughout the entire meal, she didn't stop shifting it on her finger, in that way people do when they want things to be noticed without having to mention them. When the coffee arrived, my mom placed both hands on the table and said she had something important to discuss with me. My brother and Chloe wanted to get married in May. They wanted a beautiful wedding, nothing over the top, but beautiful, with the details Chloe had been dreaming about since she was a little girl. My mom said it in that voice of hers that wasn't asking if I wanted to participate, but rather taking it as a given that I was going to participate. Because I was the family's corporate lawyer, the one who had gone off to study in Boston and then come back to Los Angeles with a position at a Century City firm and my own apartment in West Hollywood. I was, according to the family mathematics that no one had ever written down, but we all calculated perfectly, the one who had money. And the one who has money in my family is the one who pays. I asked how much they were planning to spend. I asked it directly, no beating around the bush, looking right at Chloe because I knew she was the one holding the list of everything she wanted. Chloe laughed softly, as if I had asked a question in poor taste, and said, "Oh, those things just work themselves out, that there was no need to be so rigid with the numbers." My brother put his hand on my arm and said he trusted my judgment, that I knew how to navigate those worlds, that he was sure between the 3 of us, we were going to put together something amazing. Between the 3 of us. My mom poured more coffee. The conversation drifted toward flower colors and the kind of music Chloe wanted. I was left with the numbers question floating in the air, unanswered, like those questions in my family that remain unanswered, not because the question is bad, but because the answer is uncomfortable. I left that house with a vague commitment to help coordinate, and with the highly specific sensation that I had just signed something without reading the fine print. I know that feeling well. I've had it my entire adult life, every single time I set foot in that house. The following weeks were a hailstorm of text messages from Chloe. Pinterest boards with floral arrangements, links to event venues, screenshots of wedding dresses that cost more than my car. Every message ended with a smiley face emoji and a phrase like, "Look at this and tell me what you think." I would reply between meetings in the back of Ubers during bathroom breaks at my 12th floor office. I would tell her it was pretty, that the budget for this place was reasonable, that the other one was too much. Chloe always answered the exact same way, but that's the one I liked the most. You'll see how everything just falls into place. At the end of February, I asked her again, this time in writing, what was the total budget? I needed to know, because I was about to secure the venue and the vendors' required deposits. Chloe left me on red for 3 days. On the 4th day, my brother called me. He told me that Chloe had felt a little pressured about the numbers, that she came from a family where those things were handled differently, and asked if I could just go ahead with what was necessary and we'd settle the accounts later. Settle the accounts later. I know that phrase by heart. It's the phrase in my family that means we are never going to settle the accounts. I should have stopped right there. I know that now, sitting in my living room the day I'm telling you this, with the lamp on and the recorder running, feeling that strange calm that comes from having walked through something and come out the other side. I should have said, "Look, David, no. If there's no budget, there's no wedding. And if there's no wedding with a clear budget, I'm not organizing it. I'm not booking anything. I'm not putting my card down anywhere." But I didn't say it. I said it was fine that I'd keep moving forward, that we'd talk later, and I hung up. What happened next was what always happens when you say it's fine, when it absolutely isn't. I started paying the deposit for the Santa Barbara venue in March, $4,000 on my credit card because Chloe wanted that specific one, and because my brother had told me it had been her dream since she was a little girl. Then the banquet deposit in April. The string quartet that was going to play at the religious ceremony in a historic Santa Barbara church, also because Chloe wanted that specific church. The floral decoration with those imported white flowers that came out to $4,250 just for the altar and the centerpieces. I paid for my mom's dress, too, not because they asked me to, but because one Saturday, my mom mentioned in passing that she didn't know what she was going to do because she had nothing to wear. And the phrase just stayed floating there. And I caught it, just like I had caught all the floating phrases in my family for years. The trip to Bali was my idea. That's the most absurd part of this entire story. Nobody asked me for it. I thought of it one night in March when I was eating dinner alone in my apartment, looking out the window at the lights of Santa Monica Boulevard. And I thought, it would be a beautiful thing to gift them a trip, something they would remember for the rest of their lives. It was something my dad would have done if he were alive, because my dad was the kind of man who gifted massive things without warning and without expecting gratitude. Not because he didn't care, but because he found it vulgar to expect it. I booked the trip through a boutique agency in Beverly Hills that I knew through some clients from the firm. 2 weeks in Bali, business class flights, a 5-star oceanfront hotel, all inclusive. I slipped it into a gold envelope that I planned to hand over on the night of the wedding. It cost what a new compact car costs. I put it on a 6-month interest-free payment plan on my American Express, and I didn't tell a single soul. The months slipped through my fingers between work at the firm, meetings with vendors, and Chloe's constant texts, which kept escalating in tone as the date approached. By the last week of April, Chloe was talking to me like I was her personal assistant. She would send me 3-minute voice memos complaining about things that were wrong, with details I had to fix, that the napkins the vendor sent weren't the exact color she wanted, that the tasting menu we had tried 2 weeks prior now seemed boring to her, that her mom had suggested changing the first course, and she agreed. Her mom. That phrase started appearing more and more in Chloe's messages. Her mom said this. Her mom thought that. Her mom had a cousin who knew a guy who could get such and such cheaper. I met Chloe's mom at a lunch in April at an Italian restaurant on the Upper East Side that she had suggested because she had a coupon. I liked the woman for the first half hour. She was chatty, warm. She would grab Chloe's hand when she talked about her. But halfway through the meal, she made a comment that lodged in my throat for weeks. She said, looking at her daughter with pride, how lucky Chloe was to have such a generous sister-in-law, that she herself had told her that was the luck of marrying into a family where someone had money. She said it laughing. Chloe laughed too. I smiled because that's what I do when I don't know what else to do. I paid the restaurant bill too, because when the check arrived, nobody moved a muscle. My brother got less and less involved as the wedding drew closer. He showed up late to vendor meetings, answered my texts with single syllables. He told me I was a rock star, that he didn't know what he would do without me. I asked him several times to talk about the money that we needed to get up to date with the payments, that I couldn't keep putting everything on my card without a clear plan of when and how they were going to reimburse me. My brother always had something more urgent to attend to at that exact moment. A meeting, an emergency at work, a call from Chloe's parents. I learned not to push it, not out of fear, but because pushing it started to feel like a lack of tact. As if I were being the family buzzkill for wanting to talk about something as vulgar as dollars and cents, when the only thing that mattered was that my brother was getting married. The day before the wedding, I got to my mom's house at 9 at night. I had spent the entire day coordinating with the venue, the florist, the musicians, the bakery for the 3-tier cake Chloe had chosen, French vanilla with a fresh strawberry filling. I was exhausted. My mom opened the door with that look she gets when she's uncomfortable saying something. She told me to come in, that she had forgotten to tell me something. Inside, my brother was sitting on the living room sofa with the face of a man who's been arguing. Chloe wasn't there. My brother told me he needed to ask me for one last favor. Chloe's parents had a very important commitment on the Sunday after the wedding and needed to head back early to Richmond. He asked if I could help them out with a hotel stay for that night near the venue, so they wouldn't have to drive so late. I asked how many people we were talking about. My brother said his in-laws, 2 brothers-in-law, an aunt, and a couple of cousins. 8 people, 4 rooms. I told him it was way too late to book anything at a decent price. My brother said yes, he knew, but that it was important to Chloe that they felt comfortable, that it was a way to show them the family was welcoming them. The family. I booked the 4 rooms that very night from my mom's computer at a boutique hotel in Santa Barbara, under my name on my card. $1,600. My brother gave me a hug when I finished and told me I was the best sister in the world. I tucked that phrase away in the place where I keep the phrases that fail to make me feel what they're supposed to make me feel. On the Saturday of the wedding, I woke up at 6 in the morning. The religious ceremony was at 5 in the afternoon at St. Jude's, and the reception was at 7 at the venue 2 blocks away. I spent the whole morning coordinating the final details. I got to the venue at 11 to supervise the setup. The white flowers were arriving right at that moment. 2 vans loaded with cardboard boxes full of peonies and white roses and eucalyptus. The vendor was a young guy who had been dealing with me for months and knew my face by now. He asked if the bride had confirmed the final design of the floral arch, because there had been a change 2 days ago, and he wanted to be absolutely sure. I told him yes, that was the approved design. That was another detail. Chloe had sent me 3 different versions of the floral arch in the last 2 weeks. The final time had been on a Wednesday at 11 at night with a voice memo, begging me to please change it one more time because her mom had seen a pretty picture on Instagram. I had called the florist at 7 on Thursday morning to request the change. The florist had agreed, only charging me the premium for the extra flowers. $1,750 more already sitting on my card. At 1 in the afternoon, my mom arrived at the venue. She was wearing the navy blue dress I had bought her, and she looked good. She gave me a kiss. She told me it was turning out beautifully. I told her yes, we were almost done. My mom looked around, saw the centerpieces, the lights. The technicians were testing the stage for the quartet, the floral arch at the entrance of the hall. She asked if I had done all of this. I answered yes. My mom stayed quiet for a moment. Then she told me it was a good thing my brother had me, because she wouldn't have been able to pull it off. And then, as if it were the most natural thing in the world, she asked if I had eaten yet. I told her no. She hadn't eaten either. We walked down to a little diner 3 blocks from the venue and ate chicken soup in silence, both of us staring out at the street through the diner window. When we walked out, she told me she was so proud of the woman I had become. I tucked that phrase away, right where I keep the other phrases. The religious ceremony went exactly as it was supposed to. Chloe walked down the church aisle on her father's arm in a long train dress that had driven both her and the seamstress crazy for 6 months. My brother was waiting for her at the altar with the face men make when they can't quite believe their own luck. I was in the 4th pew on the right side next to my mom. The church was decorated with the flowers I had coordinated, scored by the music of the quartet I had hired, mapped out by a printed program I had ordered from a print shop in Pasadena 2 weeks prior. No one in that church except my mom knew a thing about any of it. On the way out, it fell to me to organize everyone for photos in the courtyard. I had hired the photographer too. Chloe came over at some point between shots. She squeezed my hand and told me everything was gorgeous, and thanked me for keeping an eye on things. Keeping an eye on things. As if I were just an attentive spectator. I smiled. I told her she looked beautiful. It was true. She looked beautiful. What I had done for 6 months was part of the reason she looked that way. But that part of the truth didn't fit into a quick congratulation in a church courtyard. The reception kicked off at the venue. Dinner came out in the correct order. The waiters knew their tables. The quartet played the pieces Chloe had selected from a list I had sent her in February. The first dance was a song my brother had chosen, and that I had confirmed with the musicians in March. Everything flowed. When things flow, people don't stop to think about where the current comes from. That's the trap of doing the invisible work well. You become invisible right along with the work. I was sitting at table 10 with Chloe's second cousins, a couple from Richmond who were clients of Chloe's dad in some auto parts business, and an elderly uncle of my brother's on his late biological father's side, whom I had never met, but whom my mom had asked to be invited. At the head table sat my brother and Chloe, Chloe's parents, my mom, Chloe's siblings and their partners, and Chloe's grandparents. That table had 11 seats. My seat at that table never existed in the original plan. When I did the seating chart in April, I had suggested I sit with my mom. Chloe had told me it was better not to, that the head table was for immediate family, and she preferred I sit with the special guests so they would feel well taken care of. Special guests. I accepted it because at that point, I had accepted so many things that this was just one more. My brother stood up to ask for the microphone around 11 at night. The room quieted down table by table. My brother held his glass in his hand and had his arm around Chloe's waist. He started by thanking everyone for being there. He talked about Chloe for several minutes, about how he had met her at a mutual friend's party 3 years ago, about how he had known from their very first dinner that he was going to marry her. People smiled. Chloe dabbed her eyes. My brother went on. He started giving thanks. He thanked Chloe's parents first, calling them by their full names. He said that without them, this night would not have been possible. That phrase, "Without them, this night would not have been possible," came out of the speakers and landed right on table 10, where I was sitting with my glass of red wine in my hand. I felt it drop slowly, not with immediate pain, but with that strange precision belonging to things you know are important before you even know why. My brother continued. He thanked Chloe's siblings, thanked his in-laws 3 more times throughout the speech, referring to them as the second parents life had gifted him. He thanked their friends, he thanked the quartet, whom he mentioned by their stage name. He thanked his mom, my mom. He told her she was the strongest woman in the world. My mom covered her mouth with her napkin, and then my brother paused. The pause people take when they've covered everything they had prepared. He raised his glass and said, "And to everyone who in some way collaborated to make this night possible, thank you from the bottom of my heart." He made a sweeping gesture that encompassed the entire room. Chloe's parents clapped first. Chloe was clapping with her eyes closed. My mom turned to look for me, and our eyes locked from her table to mine. In that look, there was something I had never seen in my mom before. An apology she didn't know how to formulate into words. I held her gaze for a second, then lowered my eyes to my glass. I didn't raise it for the toast. The others at table 10 did, totally unaware they were toasting to an absence. The thing about wedding speeches is that they are irreversible. Once spoken, they cannot be amended. My brother could have stepped off the dais, walked over to table 10, hugged me, and said something. He didn't. He went back to his chair at the head table, and the night carried on. Chloe's parents came over to congratulate him. The photographer, whom I had hired, snapped a picture of my brother hugging his new father-in-law. That photo is going to exist for the rest of their lives as evidence of something that happened that night. And I am going to exist in that night solely on the venue's invoice and in the receipts tucked away in a yellow folder in my West Hollywood apartment. I got up from table 10. I walked toward the restroom at a normal pace, unhurried, without anyone noticing me leave. The venue's restroom was at the end of a hallway, decorated with flowers I had approved in March. I went in. I washed my hands, even though my hands weren't dirty. I looked at myself in the mirror. I was wearing a deep burgundy dress I had bought in February, thinking it was the appropriate shade for the groom's sister. In the bathroom mirror, I saw exactly what I was that night. Someone who had paid for a ticket to sit at the table furthest away from her own family. I pulled my phone out of my purse. I opened the Beverly Hills agency app where I held the reservation for the trip to Bali. It was right there, in green confirmed, ready to be handed over in the gold envelope I had placed on the gift table at the entrance of the hall. 2 business class tickets, 5-star hotel, 2 weeks, scheduled departure, 10 days after the wedding. I tapped the Manage Reservation button. The app asked me what I wanted to do. I selected Cancel. The app asked if I was sure. I tapped Yes. It asked for the reason. I selected Change of Plans by the account holder. Confirm. The reservation went from green to gray. Cancellation policy, the screen read. You will receive a partial refund according to the signed terms, given that departure is more than 7 days away. I was going to lose a percentage. I didn't care. I closed the app. I also opened the app for the boutique hotel where my brother's in-laws were supposed to stay. The 4 rooms showed up in green. I canceled all 4, one by one, hitting the red button. Change of plans by the account holder. Confirm. 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 I put my phone back in my purse. I dried my hands on a cloth towel I had approved in March when I selected the bathroom amenities. I walked out of the hallway. The hall was exactly as I had left it. My brother was dancing the second dance with Chloe on the floor. My mom was talking to one of my dad's cousins. My brother's in-laws were at a table with their friends from Richmond, laughing loudly, completely unaware that in roughly 6 hours, they would show up at the hotel to check in, only to find that their reservation had been canceled. I walked toward the exit. I didn't say goodbye to anyone. I walked past the gift table, where the gold envelope sat with the canceled tickets. I left it right there. Let my brother find it when he gathered the gifts the next day. Let him open it. Let him look inside at the confirmation for a trip to Bali stamped with a cancellation mark from Saturday at 11:47 p.m. Outside the venue, the Santa Barbara air at that hour smelled of late blooming jasmine and the dampness of plants watered in the afternoon. I ordered an Uber. While I waited, my mom caught up with me at the door. She had seen me leave. She asked if I was okay. I told her yes, I was just tired. My mom grabbed my hand. She didn't say anything for a few seconds. Then she told me she had heard the speech, that she had noticed. I told her yes. My mom started to say something else, some phrase that was probably going to start with, "But your brother didn't mean to," or, "You know how Chloe is." I cut her off. I told her I didn't need her to explain anything to me tonight, that there would be time for that we would talk tomorrow. My mom squeezed my hand tighter. The Uber pulled up. I gave her a kiss. I got in. The driver asked where we were heading. I told him West Hollywood. I gave him the address. I rested my head against the seat back. The car pulled away. The drive from Santa Barbara down the coast at night is a long haul, maybe an hour and a half when the traffic is clear. That night, it was 11:55 on a Saturday, and the Pacific Coast Highway was empty. Through the window, the streets I know by heart flashed by the winding ocean curves, the transition onto the 10 freeway, the glow of the city skyline, the endless loop of headlights sliding through the dark. The city at night has this quality of just keeping on refusing to stop, just because something in your personal life has irrevocably pivoted. It's a comfort. And it's also brutal. The first text hit my phone at 1 a.m. when I was already in my apartment, in my pajamas, sitting on the couch with a cup of chamomile tea. It was from my brother. It said, "What's the deal with the hotel?" No question mark, no context, no greeting. 6 words that already assumed I had some explaining to do. I read it. I didn't reply. At 1:20, another one came through. "Sister, my wife's parents are outside the hotel. They won't let them in. They're saying the rooms are canceled. What happened?" I didn't reply to that either. At 1:35, he called me. I let it ring. He left a voicemail. I listened to it. My brother's voice had shifted in tone. It was no longer the voice from the speech. It was tight, controlled, the voice of someone trying not to lose their composure, but who already knows something disastrous has happened. He said he needed me to call him back, that this was an emergency, that Chloe's family was being humiliated, and asked what on earth I was thinking. What on earth I was thinking. That was the phrase. He didn't ask what had happened. He assumed I had done something on a whim, like a caprice, a tantrum. As if 6 months of the yellow folder and my mom's dresses and floral arches modified at 11 at night were just a temper tantrum I had been holding in only to unleash it in a moment of weakness. I turned off my phone. I didn't throw it. I didn't smash it. I didn't do anything dramatic. I just powered it down. I placed it face down on the coffee table, finished my tea, brushed my teeth, got into bed, and slept. That part actually surprised me. I fully expected to lie awake all night. I expected that thing that happens when your brain just can't stop processing. But no, I slept 8 straight hours, deeply, like I hadn't slept in months. Sometimes the body knows before the mind does when you've finally put down something heavy you were carrying. On Sunday, I woke up at 9. I turned on my phone. I had 23 notifications. 6 missed calls from my brother, 2 voicemails, 8 text messages, 3 messages from my sister-in-law, Chloe, typed with that specific written fury you can spot from the total lack of punctuation. 2 messages from my mom, both saying the exact same thing. Honey, call me when you can, no rush. And 1 message from a Richmond area code I didn't have saved, which was Chloe's mom. The message read, with no greeting, Sarah, I hope you are very proud of what you did. My people had a horrible night because of you. May you have a clear conscience. I read it twice, not out of pain, but out of curiosity. It was fascinating to read a sentence so completely wrong about who had done what in this story. I called my mom. She answered on the second ring. She didn't start by asking about the wedding or the speech or the hotel. She started by asking how my morning was. I told her I was good, that I had slept. My mom stayed quiet for a moment. Then she told me she had been thinking all night, that she had replayed the speech. She had replayed the last few weeks. She had replayed the last few years. She had realized a lot of things. She said, Honey, I owe you an apology that I don't have enough lifetimes to give you. I told her she didn't owe me anything, but I knew that wasn't true. She did owe me. We both knew it. But what my mom was offering me on that call wasn't paying the debt. It was acknowledging it. And sometimes that's the closest you can get. She asked me what I was going to do about my brother. I told her I would talk to him when he was ready to listen and not just ready to fix things. My mom understood the difference. She told me she was going to tell him exactly that, to not call me until he was capable of having that conversation. I thanked her. We hung up. I made coffee. I sat at my kitchen table with the window open. My West Hollywood apartment has a kitchen window that looks right into the canopy of a massive ash tree, which in May is vibrantly green. The leaves are so dense, they move together in the wind like one single, living, breathing thing. I sat there for a while, just watching that tree. My brother called me on Wednesday, 4 days later. 4 days where I didn't answer calls, didn't reply to texts, offered 0 explanations. I picked up that Wednesday call because my mom had tipped me off that he had accepted the terms. My brother's voice sounded different, older, slower. He started by apologizing for the 1:30 a.m. text for asking what on earth I was thinking, for everything he had said that night when he was reacting without thinking. I thanked him for the apology. I told him I had a much longer thing to say to him, if he had the time. He told me he had all the time in the world. I told him about the venue in my name, the banquet on my card, the quartet, the floral arch modified 3 times at 11 at night, our mom's dress, the trip to Bali that was going to be my gift, which he had only found out about through a gold envelope on a gift table. I told him about the budget question back in February that never got an answer. I told him about Chloe's mom's comment at the Italian restaurant. I told him about my seat at table 10. I told him about the speech. I told him the thing with the hotel wasn't a sudden outburst. It was the first moment in years where I made a decision based on what I needed, instead of what was expected of me. My brother listened. That surprised me too. My brother isn't the type to listen. He's the type who waits for his turn to speak. That afternoon, he listened. When I finished, there was a long silence. Then he said just one sentence. He said, I have no way to fix this. I told him I knew he didn't, that I wasn't asking him to fix it. I was asking him to understand it. And I was asking him for something else. I was asking that from this moment forward, things between us had to be different, because the version of me who organized everything and paid for everything and sat quietly at table 10 had expired on Saturday night. And she wasn't coming back. Not for love, not out of guilt, not from family pressure. If he wanted to have a sister, he was going to have to learn to have one under different terms. If he wanted a rock star to organize his life, he was going to have to hire someone. My brother said he understood. I told him it was easy to understand with words, but it was going to take time to prove it. He said he was willing. I told him I hoped so. We also talked about dollars and cents. I told him the total of what I had spent, not counting the trip to Bali. Because the trip to Bali had been my decision, and canceling it had also been my decision, and that was my business. But the rest of it stood. The venue, the banquet, the flowers, the quartet, my mom's dress, the 4 hotel rooms, which I had to pay for anyway because the late cancellation didn't refund everything. My brother did the math out loud on the other end of the line. The figure was serious. He told me he was going to talk to Chloe, that they would figure out a way to pay me back, even if it had to be in monthly installments, for however long it took. I told him yes, I accepted the plan, but on one condition. We were going to sign a contract. My brother went quiet. I told him it wasn't a matter of distrust, it was professionalism. That I was going to treat him exactly the way I would treat any client at the firm who owed me money. My brother said, okay. We signed an agreement 2 weeks later at my office in Century City. My brother came alone. Chloe refused to come. I respect that too, because everyone processes these things the best they can. The agreement outlined monthly payments over 36 months with a symbolic interest rate. My brother signed. I signed. I shook his hand. I hugged him at the end. Not because I wasn't angry, but because he was my brother. And because you hug family even when you're setting terms for them. 3 months went by. Things in the family settled into a different kind of order. Chloe and I haven't spoken again. My brother's in-laws blocked me on everything, which, frankly, doesn't cost me any sleep. My mom started coming over to my apartment for dinner every other Thursday. A brand new habit that didn't exist before, one we are building, slowly. My brother makes his payments every single month, punctual. Every time the transfer hits my account, I send him a brief thank you message, just like I would send to any reliable client. That's the relationship we have now. On the surface, it's less than what we had before, but in reality, it's more. Because for the first time, it's built on something real, and not on the assumption that I'm always going to be there to cover the shortfall. I finally took the trip to Bali by myself in September. I bought the tickets again under my name, on my card, with no gold envelope for anyone. 2 weeks on the exact same island I had booked for my brother and Chloe. The same 5-star oceanfront hotel. I arrived on a Monday at 11 in the morning local time after an endlessly long flight. The hotel receptionist was a young woman with a greeting in English and a professional smile. She handed me my key. My room had a terrace overlooking the ocean. I left my suitcase unpacked. I walked out onto the terrace. The sun was high. The water was a color I had never seen before, a blue that wasn't quite blue, somewhere between green and turquoise, with the light hitting it in a way entirely different from how it hits the Pacific coast back home. I leaned against the railing. I breathed. I thought about my brother for a second. Not with anger, not anymore. With that distance you get from finally understanding something. I thought about how absurd it was to be standing on that terrace after everything that had happened, in the exact spot where I had planned to send other people. I thought about my dad, who had been dead for years but whom I still miss on the big days. I thought about what he would have told me if he could see the 2 of us on that balcony. The Sarah from 6 months ago paying for absolutely everything. And the Sarah of today, watching the Bali Sea all by herself. I think my dad would have understood. My dad was the kind of man who understood things without needing much of an explanation. What I learned during those months, not overnight, but in layers, layer upon layer, was this. Serving your family is not the same as belonging to your family. They are two entirely different things that in my house, and probably in a lot of American homes, get so tangled up that no one can tell them apart anymore. When you serve, you are on the outside, standing up, holding the weight. When you belong, you are on the inside, sitting down, receiving as well. I spent 38 years believing that standing there, holding the weight, was an elegant way of being on the inside. It isn't. It's just an elegant way of being on the outside with your hands full. That Saturday at the Santa Barbara wedding, when my brother made that sweeping gesture encompassing the whole room without ever naming me, he didn't make me invisible. He made me visible for the very first time in my adult life. I saw, completely without filters, the exact place I occupied in that family. And I also saw, in that very same second, that I had built that place myself. With every time I said, "It's fine," when it wasn't. With every time I paid without being asked. With every time I sat down at table 10 without claiming the head table that was also rightfully mine. The good news? The thing I discovered on that balcony in Bali with the ocean in front of me and the humid air tangling in my hair is that a place you built all by yourself is a place you can also dismantle all by yourself. Nobody has to give you permission. Nobody has to sign a thing. One decision at a time, one no at a time, one red cancellation button at a time. And in the end, you find yourself in places you never thought you'd be, looking at a sea that isn't quite blue and isn't quite green, discovering that belonging to yourself is the only belonging that is truly non-negotiable. If this story found its way to you somehow, subscribe to the channel and tell me in the comments, what was your table 10? Sometimes just naming it is the first step to getting up from it. Sometimes no one chooses table 10 for us but ourselves, by staying quiet when it was time to speak, by paying when it was time to ask questions. But you are also the one who can stand up from it. No screaming, no resentment, just the quiet clarity of knowing you are worthy of a real seat at the table. Serving the ones we love is a beautiful thing when it comes from a free heart, not from the fear of being unloved. Your worth never depended on how much weight you carried. A quick note before we go. This story was created and dramatized by artificial intelligence to entertain you while leaving a bright little lesson to embrace your day. M.